Hey everybody, today we're going to go over the Terminator X V3 transmission control additions that we have now in V3. So they've done a whole bunch of updates for the transmission stuff in V3. The first one that a lot of people had asked about and for was they have added 6L80 control, and you will need to use a controller that Holley offers, but they now have control for a 6L80. So that's a whole different video, but we're going to get into the other one that they added. They added three main ones here, right? They also added manual transmission control. So this is kind of nice. So what this does is it gives you a speedometer output. It'll also give you the vehicle speed sensor, the 17 tooth or the 12 tooth with a Tremec TKX. But your vehicle speed sensor, you'll be able to plug it right in. They make a harness for it now. Pretty slick. But the one that I'm excited about to have in, there's two things that I'm excited about that are in V3 that was in Dominator and HP software. The one is the racing trans ICF. So if you've got a Turbo 400 or a 2-speed Power Glide, or something like a race trans, right, or a full manual valve body 4L80, we now have the ability to control the shifter in race trans mode. So we enable this. This is the shift output. I've made other videos for V6, so if you want more in-depth explanations about how all this stuff works, go check that out. But here's like your shifter control for your Turbo 400 or your Power Glide. You select how many gears that the transmission has, right, in the transmission setup. So we have 3-speed. Let's just assume we're dealing with a Turbo 400. And it's a single output, which means it's one wire, right? That's going to be triggering like a MAC valve for an air solenoid or an electric shift solenoid, a relay for an electric shift solenoid. We also have the ability, they've changed this in V6 Build 300 as well, to have a shift master enable or not. So you don't have to use up an input now to have a switch somewhere on the dash to turn on a shift master enable. You don't have to have that, which is nice. So this is the 1-2 shift. We can select shift RPM. We could do it by time, or we could do it for both, right? So it has to be the release of the trans brake button. Again, it says enable gear reset with T-brake input. So we let go of the trans brake button. If we spin the tires, let's say we move this to 1 second. Say we spin the tires immediately and it goes to 6,800 RPM. It won't shift until it goes over 6,800 RPM and 1 second after the release of the trans brake button. That's good because we don't want to pick up a whole bunch of wheel speed from a spin and click it into second gear, gain wheel speed, and have a more dangerous situation. So we have the ability to now use this, which I use on every car that we do with a Dominator or an HP. Now we have it in Terminator X, which is pretty sweet. And then you can program a separate RPM for the 2-3 shift. Say you want to spin the 2-3 shift out to 7,200. You can do that. You can add a timer in here if you want to. You have to select your output active time and inactive time after the shift. I made a really long in-depth video about shift control and all the race trans ICF stuff. It also gives you the ability to enable a timing offset during a shift. We use this a lot on big power radial cars. When they make the 1-2 shift, sometimes they want to shake the tire or rattle the tire. We can retard timing out of it for the 1-2 shift for however much timing we want out of it. So, and then we could change the scale down here for time and all that. So if we wanted to do the 2-3 shift, we can edit that table as well right here, and that's the red line that's up here. So watch the other video if you plan on using this on shift output setup. It's on my channel. You'll learn a lot from it. Next thing that's in the race trans ICF, spool assist valves. These work when they are no matter what, right? So if you're over 75% TPS and under 5 pounds of boost, the dump valve is going to be on. It's a very basic on-off, doesn't really matter what you're doing with it. These are good for just getting up on the trans brake if you've got a dump valve. I know these say dump valve and spool assist valve, but it's the same thing. If you're controlling converter charge pressure with a dump valve, if you want a simple on-off, you just use a spool assist valve. If you need a little bit something more in depth, go to dump valves. So you can enable a dump valve. We can have it on while it's on the trans brake, and we can have it on for X amount of time after the release of the trans brake. We can have a minimum TPS. We can leave it on for, say, 1.5 seconds. We have a pedaling strategy. We have an activation delay. We have a whole bunch of different stuff that we can do. And we can also pulse the output open and closed. So again, I made a really good in-depth video on dump valves and how to program all this stuff. Watch it and you'll learn something from it. So if you want more in-depth dump valve or converter charge pressure control, this is a great way of doing it. So on the topic of transmissions, we have been using this V3 software in my employee Justin's car with his 4L80 for a while now. So let me show you what we can do. Go to 4L80. There's some pretty cool stuff that's been added. I'm not some master of factory transmission control, so this is not really exactly my forte, but I learned a bunch when we were messing with his. So we have got our standard torque converter lockup, stuff that's always been here, right? So you've got a minimum gear to enable the lockup, but now they've added a time in gear before it locks up. So if we set this to third gear, we have to be in third gear for at least 2 seconds before the torque converter is going to lock up. Okay, this is all pretty self-explanatory. Minimum RPM to enable it, RPM to disable it, minimum TPS or maximum TPS for torque converter lockup. We can unlock during upshift, we can unlock during downshift, or we could just disable it completely. We have a lock versus unlock speed versus TPS table that's always been here. We've got slew rates, they've always been here, but here's the advanced section. So we now have torque management. So this is pretty sweet. With torque management, what we're doing is it's a timing retard, so a positive value is going to remove timing. Okay, so if we wanted to remove 10 degrees for the 1-2 shift to manage torque to try to keep the transmission alive, we can, right? So this is the 1-2, this is the 2-3, then this is the 3-4. Oops, right there. So we can have, here we go. We can do like 5 degrees out and then ramp that in over to here. And we'll see a different line here. We go to the 2-3 and we can do like, let's say 12 degrees here for the whole, no, there we go. We'll just do this and fill row values. Whoops, undo, right click, fill row values. So now we've got 3 different torque management curves for the 1-2, the 2-3, and the 3-4. Pretty sweet. Big fan of that. It works just like our timing offset with the race trans ICF. So these are shift parameters that have always been here, wide open throttle shift, yada yada. There's some pretty slick stuff here that I'm a pretty big fan of. This one's really useful. We found this to be pretty good in Justin's car. It was nice when you're cruising down the road. If you're right in between that spot where you're like, say, cruising 45 mile an hour and it's in third gear, but then it potentially could shift to fourth. We found that this to be useful when he's like in traffic, in third gear, don't want to lock it up yet. Wait till we get to fourth, or if we're going to be in third for a little while, let's wait until, so it's just not going through shift after shift, lock, unlock, and the car kind of drives a little bit, it like bucks a little bit. So that was a pretty good, useful addition. So a lot of really cool new transmission stuff that's added. There's a lot here. There's a lot to digest. So take your time when you're doing it, and make sure you've got it all correct and set up the way you want it to set up. So anyway, that is Holley Terminator X V3 transmission control updates. You guys that want the 6L80, there'll be a controller for it. It's pretty sweet. Again, I'm not a huge factory transmission type guy, but we've got a lot of control for 6L80. So it's pretty sweet. So that'll be a whole separate video, though, that I'm not going to be doing now because, to be 100% honest with you, I have zero experience with a 6L80. So until I actually got my hands on one, I'm not going to make a video and talk about something that I don't know anything about. So Thanks for checking it out. Make sure you watch the other videos on the V3 updates and the new V6 Build 300 updates. Have a good one.